Welcome Hawks fans to the Hawks Nest podcast for the Drysdale Football Netball Club.
G'day viewers, it's Hamatron here, and you are listening to the Hawks Nest podcast.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Hawks Nest podcast, and this week we have Greg Collier, former president and committee member. How are you, Greg?
Buddy, I'm extremely well and in lockdown like everyone else, although we're a little bit eased compared to Melbourne. But, yeah, itching for a game of footy. At least the juniors start this week, so looking forward to seeing a ball kicked in anger.
Yeah, the footy this week will be absolutely amazing. Under 17s, 15s and so on. Now, we're going to have a bit of a chat about your footballing career, your life, a bit about your life, not just about. A lot of people see you at the footy club and see you as a committee member, president, and spectator. But I want to kind of get the listeners and the viewers to really hear about your story and where you're from, a bit more about you and a bit more of information about you. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds good. I'm absolutely delighted that you've just said that I had a football career. That's the first time it's ever been stated in history. So thanks very much. I'm looking forward to this already.
Yeah, beautiful. We're going to start off. Where are you from? Where did it all start for you?
So I hail from the thriving metropolis of Jerilderie, and if you that's in southern New South Wales. If you know your Australian history, Jerilderie is quite famous. Ned Kelly made an unauthorised withdrawal from the Westpac Bank there in 1879. Yeah. And there's a guy there who grew up at primary school. I went to primary school there. John Monash, his name was. The teacher told him, or told his parents when he was about 7 or 8, that he was too smart to stay at school in Jerilderie. He should go down to Melbourne for expert schooling. He did. He went to Scotch College, became a world leader at the war and all those kind of things. Fantastic. The principal of the school had no such conversation with my parents. I did all my schooling at Jerilderie and then Finley High, and so that's still hometown. I get up there pretty often.
Yep. A nice little town up there.
Yeah, it was kind of born on the sheep's back, and that's kind of all kicked away. They grow tomatoes and a bit of broad cropping and a bit of livestock up there, but it's on the main road between Melbourne and Brisbane, which currently is not running, so she's pretty quiet.
Not running at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're from up there. Now, talk us a little bit about the football club that they were struggling kind of on and off field. How did they kind of get back up to standard they should be at?
Yeah, so Jerilderie had always played kind of Murray League footy. Murray League's pretty strong. The Bellarine played them a few years back, actually when I was the president of the club, and I actually went and watched that game. But Jerilderie had always struggled, and as a young fella there, we won the 4th premiership. That was the first kind of premiership that the football club, that's under 14s, under 15s, had won. That was 1981 or something, 1979, I reckon. And so the seniors had always struggled. I think we played in the grand final in 1976, got done, and then they decided as a committee to spend some money and import some players, and they imported a few players early 80s. They won the flag in 1983. The town went nuts, and people started to walk around town happier, buy more. The town really started to thrive. And that really kicked things off to be the foundation of their approach to footy over probably the next 20 or so years.
Yeah. So
really exciting.
Yeah. So it's a real sporting town. You would say.
Yeah, and you've got to play sport in towns like that to be able to fit in, and whether it's golf or footy or cricket or tennis, lawn bowls if you need to. There's always something that centres around sport.
Yep. Now, I've interviewed footballers mostly. Now, as a young boy, did you play a lot of footy? Were you any good?
Yeah, I was no good, to be honest. I'm just glad that there's no video around that can actually verify just how bad I was. Having said that, I was tall for my age. So when I was playing under 17s, I got a bit taller than the other blokes, and I actually played rep footy in under 17s in the interleague side, and that was a bit of a highlight. And but it kind of fell away. and I was very good socially, really good. Knew how to drink a beer and knew how to interact and really kind of get the social side of things going. It was around that time, I reckon, I really started to embrace helping clubs out on committee, and I've been on committees all through my life, and whether that's football club committees, cricket club, golf club, polo cross club, it's been a big part of who I've been.
Exactly.
You've got to be involved.
Yeah, that's it. You don't have to be a star on the field. There's so many things you can do at a football club, especially like our football club.
Yeah, and my mates used to say I was a Thursday night champion. Geez, I was good. I trained really well, but come Saturday, not so strong.
Not so strong. No. Now, tell us about the football club. What colours did they wear? What were they?
They were the Mighty Demons, and still are. They, when I was a young fellow, they wore Melbourne jumpers, or Melbourne colours, and they've changed leagues, and so now they've gone back and they still wear. They're still the Demons, but they're no longer in Melbourne colours. They're a bit of a hybrid. Kind of looks like the Dockers with a little bit of green in there because another team in the competition's got their old jumper. Yep.
Now tell us. You played in the town's only A-grade cricket premiership. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, that's a story. The town had only really played competitive cricket probably from the late 70s, and I played in an under-15s premiership as a young fella, and that was exciting. And there's just people around the club around the town that were passionate about cricket, and I loved playing cricket, and used to stand out on the Jerilderie footy oval or cricket oval at 45-degree days, and with the haze of Patterson's curse blowing across the oval and making everyone sneeze. But the camaraderie, played with a couple of cousins, some great mates, and beat the raging hot favourites in the semi, and made the grand final, and had a win. And it's still the club's or the town's only A-grade cricket premiership, and I'm immensely proud. There's a photo hanging in the pub at home with me. You probably don't recognise me because these days I've got a grey beard and grey hair, but back in those days I had a magnificent mullet, Harry Ayres-ish, and so very exciting.
Yeah, you were only 20. Do you catch up with those that crew much?
Yeah, I do. We had a reunion last year, and it's funny how things kind of turn out. My best mate was my best man when I got married. He was the gun bowler and won 7 league medals as a cricketer. A great guy, great player. So I always catch up with him regularly. One of the guys has passed away a couple of years ago, so it's always sad to think about that as well. And his name was Dave Milthorpe, and a great guy. But I look at those photos fondly. I've got a poster-sized photo of that team somewhere, but under strict instructions from Sharon that will never hang on a wall in our house.
So speaking of Sharon, talk to us a little bit about your family.
I married up, and Sharon was from Barooga, a famous sporting town as well, and she's been surrounded by great sports people as she's grown up, and her brothers and her dad are great sports people as well. And we've got 4 kids and 3 grandkids, a couple of other grandkids on the way. Yep. And it's been a great journey, and we've lived in a lot of different towns. We've now been in Drysdale that's our longest stint anywhere. For nearly, I think, 18 years, which has been fun. But happily married for 32 years. Well, mostly, happily. But 32 years, which is a pretty good result.
Good run
these days.
Yeah, that's what everyone wants, really. Now, also speaking of family, talk about your dad. Is part of the committee and was secretary.
Yeah, so my dad and my mum were great volunteers. I think that's just what you do in a small country town. They had a really good ethic around volunteering. So my dad, he had quite an illness as a young fella. He had tuberculosis, which is a disease that you don't hear much of these days.
Yeah.
And so lost a big part of his lung and was never a fit man. But he found other ways to contribute. And like back in those days, as a 19-year-old, had a year in hospital to recover. But came out of there, he was the secretary of the footy club. He's a volunteer fireman for 54 years. He's a life member of Apex, a life member of Lions. And he was involved in getting the cricket club started as well, and a great contributor, and mum as well. So she was involved in the CWA, and was the hospital auxiliary and treasurer for 35 years or something, and set up the church shop. And they were just active people in the community. So that kind of contribution was always bred into me.
Yeah, well, something like that, and like I said, that's an even smaller town, but like our football club, those people, they run the football club, and that keeps us going, really.
Yeah, and Drysdale's amazing for that. I remember when I was the president, you'd walk in and there would be, you'd ask for a hand, and 20 hands had arrived to kind of help you out, and often they were the same hands, and you had to kind of say, well, let's get some more people involved as well. Let's get 40 and 60 and 80 hands. But there was 125 active volunteers in the club in my final year, and I made it a point to walk in on a Thursday night. There'd be all these people working in the kitchen tirelessly with a smile on their face, and you could really then just go in and say good day to them all, and they were just delighted to be helping out. And whether it's people giving massages or running water or cleaning the cobwebs off the front of the club rooms, or putting fencing up for grand finals, or parking cars, or sweeping up change rooms, or there's just so many jobs. And in a club like Drysdale, it just happens, and it's an absolute feather in our cap as a club that we're so welcoming around that, and people can be involved.
Yeah. Our club is great for that. The volunteers, there is so many, whether it be any of those things that you mentioned, there is so many, and that really helps our club run.
And I remember Barty picking up rubbish after a grand final, and some clubs you go to, and I've been involved with, where there's not as many volunteers, but I remember being out on the ground, and it was like the volunteers were like seagulls on a chip trying to pick up one piece of scrap paper. Everyone had a bag, and we're trying to run towards one bit of paper to try and get it into our rubbish bag. And we're nearly fighting over it because everyone wanted to have a contribution and make a difference. It was just fantastic.
Yeah. So I think something like that means that just everyone loves this club, and they want to be here, and they want to support not just the players, but everyone around them, all the juniors and everything. I think everyone just genuinely loves this club.
Yeah, and it's a big part of the town and a big part of the community, and it feels good to be involved in.
Yeah, it's great to be involved. Now, to finish off, we'll finish off on a couple of things about you growing up in your early days. Tell us about your dad's brother who was a gun footy player, played interleague, played all that.
Yeah, so his name was John Collier, and he was a gun footballer back in the day. If you go back to some of the older guys that are now kind of departed, but and they listed some of the greatest players they'd ever seen play the game, and my Uncle John was featured strongly in a lot of those conversations and a lot of those lists. He did play interleague, and in 1954 he was actually invited down to Footscray to do a pre-season, and they were pretty impressed with him. Somewhere in a box of stuff, I've got the coloured letterhead from Footscray on the invite. He went down, he had a kick. They wanted to sign him up for the year. He missed his girlfriend, he missed shearing his sheep, and he missed his hometown. So he turned his back on that and turned around. And the Doggies won the flag in 54, so you just never know. Sliding doors. Would have had something to brag about.
You never know what would have happened. Could have had a premiership uncle.
Yeah, terrific. So I've got to kind of cling on to the Colliers who played for Collingwood. Are distant relatives, but I can't really claim any kind of connection with those.
No. Now, we'll finish off from your early days. Tell us a bit about your mates and a notable mate that I'm sure a lot of people will realise the name.
Yeah, so growing up in Drury and then Finley, going to high school there, a pleasure to see blokes go on and play league footy. You know, in year 7 in our high school side, you know, blokes like Bernard Toohey and Ronald Watt, who both went out and had a kick in the VFL back in those days. And yeah, it was a big part of kind of growing up. I had 3 mates that were regularly picked in state sides, and you know, Scott Shaw and John Peasley and Bill Brownless. And so in 1984, Bill Brownless had gone to Assumption College. He'd done that from year 9, and they wanted him to go down to Geelong and have a kick. And through his dad, Tony, who was a great guy, said, "No, mate, I want you to come back and play a year in country footy." So he came back and played that year in Jerilderie. We got done in the finals, went through. Bill did his ankle in one of those games as well, and really he carried that injury through his whole football career.
Yeah.
But in that year, he was invited down by Geelong to go and play a match permit. A few of us boys got in, and Geelong hosted us down in Geelong as well. And we saw him kick his first goal wearing number 66 from memory in the 2s on a match permit. And then the year after, in 1986, he got drafted or signed. We were in their region. And, for his first 50 games, Geelong were really out and about to make a fuss of his mates, to make that a part of signing Bill and making him feel comfortable. And, we had a great time. You'd go to Lyric, it was called back in those days, with drink cards and 21st parties and hang out with players. And, it was for a boy from the bush and a couple of us, it was just fantastic. I reckon he turned the corner at about game 51, and look at that, you don't get anything. So, we kind of kick on. But, that was great to see him go through. He had a great career, and, 198 games. I reckon he probably could have played a few more if, perhaps he didn't play that year in Jerilderie in 85. But, But now he was, then he got fat and slow, and, hearing talk about his footy, he was, he's a bit better than we actually remember, I reckon.
Yeah, I'd say coming from me, that might be spot on.
Well, and it's funny, watching him play in the 89 grand final. I was a Hawthorn supporter. Having a mate playing a grand final, I thought, I'm going to go for the Cats here, and then they played Hawthorn. And then I had Geelong in my blood, and was able to go I haven't turned back from being a Geelong supporter. If he had told me he was going to play in 4 losing ones, I might have had a different decision.
Might have been a different story.
Yeah.
You ran an Auskick centre up in Melbourne for about 6 years, did you?
Yeah. So we moved around town. So I kind of went from Jerilderie to Kyabram to Myrtleford to Bendigo to Melbourne. And by then the young fella and my daughter wanted to play footy. So we were living in Murrumbina, ended up running Murrumbina Auskick. Was on the Murrumbina Junior Footy Club committee there for a couple of years. And some pretty good pedigree. We had 3 of our coaches were actually involved in coaching roles at the AFL at that time, and we were able to, out of that Auskick Centre, we produced 3 league footballers. Probably Tom Murphy was the leading one, and Fletcher Roberts was another one who just got delisted by the Doggies. But great pedigree, and really enjoyed running Auskick and being involved in coaching development as well.
Yep, that would have been a beneficial for you, and just to kind of spend time with younger kids.
And do things being involved in Auskick as well, like you go along. So VFL Park as it was, and both my older kids played in the grid games, and I was umpiring, and they're great photos and great memories for those kids, as well as we've had through our club as well, through our Auskick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, why did you move to Drysdale? Why Drysdale?
So I took a job in Fiji, and we all moved to Fiji and lived in Fiji for 3 years. And
so, all right, I'll stop you right there.
Yeah.
We'll have a chat. We'll have a chat about that. So, before Drysdale, you moved to Fiji. You took a job.
Yeah.
Now, does that involve your occupation, or is that completely nothing to do with it?
No, it was my occupation. So I'd been with the one employer for a long time, and I used to travel a lot for work internationally. I'd worked in Fiji and places like Pakistan and India and Dubai, and And I decided that I wanted to take my family with me for a bit of an assignment, and so we signed up for a 3-year gig living in Suva in Fiji, and we had a ball. It was awesome. Missed our footy. Yeah. No, we used to record the football on it used to be played at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, and then I'd record it, videotape, and then I'd go and play golf, and then I'd come back and watch it, and I'd make sure I wasn't able to see any results before we watched it. Like it was live with a beer. It was terrific. Yeah.
What was there, when you lived there, was it mostly just Fijians, or was there any Australians at all?
Yeah, there's a few around, and Fijians love their rugby, and so the sport that gets telecast, or did in those times, was the NPC, so the National Provincial Cup out of New Zealand, which is rugby union. That's a big part of their culture, and we used to go and watch a few rugby league games and rugby union games in Fiji as well. Yeah. The police commissioner, his name was Andrew. He decided that he wanted to have a bit of a kick at the footy. So we then said, well, let's kind of see if we can get a bit of a game going. The pipe dream was that perhaps we'd get some Fijians to go and play AFL footy.
Play AFL, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a bit harder than we thought, but we used to get together every Sunday and have a kick. And Andrew Hughes, he's no longer with us. He took up a great job at the United Nations, but has recently passed away from cancer. But we did form the Fiji Australian Football Association, and so we called it the FAFA. We didn't know that FAFA had a different meaning in Fijian. We were told that a little bit later, but still pretty funny. We didn't produce any AFL footballers, but we did have the AFL send us a bit of gear and show some interest. Then there was a coup, and so Andrew Hughes, as an example, got kicked out of the country by the new president. I'd already left, and so there was a hiatus. We left some money there in an account. Skip forward to 2017, 2018, the AFL Fiji has now been formed from those kind of early days, and I was in Fiji for work when Richmond won the flag, and was hosted by AFL Fiji to watch the grand final, and I managed to pick up an international cup Fiji jumper, which is hanging on the wall, probably next to where that cricket photo should be hanging. And I treasure it. That was good memories to be able to be involved as a committee man to try to get Australian rules football started in another country. Really enjoyed it.
No, it's fantastic. So you basically formed AFL in Fiji, pretty much.
Well, if you're going to say that, I'll cling on to that. But let's say I had a little bit of a role, and
a bit of a role, a small role.
But it's the same thing, right? So football doesn't just happen. You need people to bring the footies, to volunteer, to teach kids how to kick, and we did do a little bit of that with some of the locals. But you also need people to run committees and to register clubs and to cover insurance and to arrange all of those kind of things and to raise a bit of funding. And that was a big part of what I was able to do and leave a little bit of a legacy with some cash as well to get them started.
Yeah. So you're in Fiji. So Fiji for 3 years?
Yeah.
And then what followed on?
So we had the opportunity to move back to Melbourne, and then we decided we wanted to bring our kids up in the country, like Sharon and I grew up in the country. And at that stage, Sharon's parents were living in Point Lonsdale, and he was the superintendent of the Lonsdale Golf Course. They'd been there for a lot of years, and so we started to look around down this part of the world, and kind of just before we'd come home, and I wanted a couple of acres because a couple of the kids like to ride horses, and so I looked around and found the place we currently live in Drysdale, nice and close to schools, good little community, and I thought, oh, this will do. Let's do it. I bought this place where we live off the internet, hadn't even seen it. And,
hadn't even seen it.
Saw a couple of photos, sent the in-laws around. They said, yeah, it'll do. And the first time the kids had seen it was when we were moving in.
Oh, boy. Well, that's it. You've been there for 18 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've left Fiji. You're in Drysdale. You've just bought a house.
Yeah.
Well, were you working in Geelong, or you still working in Melbourne and going up there?
Yeah, but I initially started to do the commute on the train, so into Geelong, South Geelong, jump on the train, back and forth. Did that for a couple of years. Then I was based out of Williamstown, looking after the western suburbs, northern western suburbs of Melbourne. Yep. So I got a car with that job, so I was up and down the highway, and then I actually took over the Geelong Ballarat region and started to run a big part of that as well. And that's kind of how I deepened my involvement with Drysdale, actually, because at one stage you got an allocation that you could spend on local marketing, and I used to roll in the cash, and I sponsored at one stage Ocean Grove, Torquay and Drysdale in the Bellarine League, and it was good to be involved with, and started to come along to some functions and really enjoyed it.
No, definitely. So sponsoring, did you start sponsoring those clubs before or after your young fella started playing juniors at Drysdale?
As a business person, and I was involved. The young fellow was playing footy, and the girls were playing netball and things like that. But as a business person, I made a decision for the big business that I was running that involving yourself in local sport and having a presence in the local community was a big part of being a country person. Yep. And it was interesting that that after I left that role, it was taken over by someone from the city and was run from that guy who lived in a suburban area. And interestingly, that business and that sponsorship across those three clubs no longer happens, and the business is actually shut down in Drysdale. Different priorities, I think, about how you do that. But there is an absolute benefit, as all of our sponsors will know, to be involved in local sporting clubs.
Yes.
And there's some great stats, that talk about the return on investment and the presence that you can have. And and I do like the idea that people will walk past one business to go to a business with that is a known sponsor for the footy club.
Exactly. And we have a lot of sponsors you can see all around the ground when we're playing against people. We have really got a lot of sponsors. I see our ground has got probably more than most. Yeah,
and it's really important. And the people that run that sponsorship and build those relationships are terrific. And some of the sponsors, hard work. They've got $1,000 budgets and $1 million expectations, and
that's it.
Then you've got other sponsors that have got big budgets and no expectation at all, and I think there's a healthy mix in there as well. That if they scratch our back, we should be able to scratch their back, and a return on business is with custom and acknowledging people in their business endeavours. There's a big part of that, because if the town's thriving, a bit like 1983, like I said in Jerilderie, the football club's successful, there's a buzz around town, people start to get a little bit more confident. It's funny, in this COVID environment, people starting to miss footy, and I can see, crystal ball, that when we pop out of this, hopefully in 2021, and we have a full season, that the football club's going to be even more important for our mental health and just for our confidence as a community and the broader community, but also to getting back to business as well, and making sure that business sentiment and that business confidence starts to come back, and we can all start to walk around with a smile on our face.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think after this COVID, for the whole club, and especially speak about the sponsors investing in our club, it's just getting out of this whole COVID stuff is going to be great for the football club, great for the community, and great for the sponsors that are their businesses and they're actually investing in the football club when they're trying to survive themselves.
And it's and I saw a note from Dave Wilder, the president, last week, just talking about how some sponsors have decided to leave their money in the club even though we're not playing senior footy this year. And that stuff is never is never forgotten. It's always remembered, and it's a credit to those sponsors and to the people that want to do that. And we as a club, we're a big community, and whether it's nearly 500 players and a broader community of probably over 5,000 people that are involved.
Yeah, exactly.
Knowing who they are and returning that to those businesses with our custom is really important.
Yeah, exactly. You were asked to join the committee, and how did that come? If you can remember, how did that come about? Who asked you, and how long were you just a general committee member for?
So I was always watching the footy. I used to watch the footy over in front of the cricket rooms, and Gary Holt always reminds me I had a big black coat on watching the footy, and really, really enjoyed it. It was nice just to kind of be there and then go in for a sausage roll at half time as a sponsor, and I really felt like I was a part of things, and it was just a good chance to relax. And then Rod Taylor said to me once, "Oh, you should come on committee," and then Cravo, "No, you should come on committee," and why not? I'll give it a crack. And then after I'd said that, Cravo said, "Well, do you want to be the treasurer? Would you be willing to do that?" And I said, "Well, I've been the treasurer a couple of times for a couple of clubs. Happy to,
Yeah.
And that was good. So I joined the committee as the incoming treasurer. And Marty Llewellyn had done a great job over a bunch of years to do that. And I never actually got to pick up the box of the checkbook and the financials, because pretty soon I was actually working in the Philippines, and the voted-in president had decided that he couldn't continue just due to some personal reasons, and so I got a call in the Philippines saying, "Would you like to be the president?"
Yeah.
And I thought, I better check home, just because I think it might be a bit of work involved.
Yeah, exactly.
And cut a long story short, by the time I got back from the Philippines for work, I had to go and introduce myself, and a lot of people knew me as that bloke in the black coat. But g'day, I'm Greg, and I'm the new president. And so it was a bit of a dive in the deep end.
Yeah, it would have been a dive in the deep end. As you said, a lot of people just see you as a bloke in the black coat. A couple of people know you're a sponsor. You're on the committee, you do these committee meetings, and then off to the Philippines, you come back and you're the president. And there'd be a lot of people that wouldn't have even realised who you are, and then they say that you're the president, and then you continue that on for 6 years.
Yes, I did my 6 years, or 5 3/4, I think it was. So, and that's how much fun I had. I really enjoyed it. But good committees as well. You do need to ventilate them, and I knew when it was time to kind of step away, and you get new people to look at things in new ways. And as a footy club, you've got to raise a lot of money, and it's big business these days, and. But I got as much out of that volunteering as I gave, and I really feel blessed to have to have served on that committee in that role for my time, and I really feel that I grew, and I talk about leadership and leadership development in my job and what I do as a career these days, and I learned more about leadership running a not-for-profit, not-for-loss, but not-for-profit organisation with volunteers and people who play their game for fun. I learned more about leadership in probably that 6 years than I did in a corporate environment for a lot longer. And I really, really enjoyed it.
Yep. So speaking about that, there's a lot of business to being a president. There's a lot that obviously you've learned more about leadership, and there's a lot about being president that is business, and from your corporate job that you can bring that into a committee, being a committee man. But tell me, what was probably the best fun you had, the best time at the club as president?
I don't know if it was the best the best fun. I probably can't tell you all of the best fun ones. There's a couple in there that best shared over a beer. But to give you a sense of the quantum that you can have in a role like that is that when I joined the committee, I was kind of told that the pipeline or the pipe dream was to we only had one oval, and that ideally with a growing club, sometimes we'd have 17, 18 teams. That's massive. Yeah. And Auskick were run at the primary school, and they weren't really seen as part of the club. And women's footy was kind of on the march, and we needed an extra footy ground. And when we looked at that, there were spooking numbers around $20 million to be able to build this new ground.
Yeah.
And so we just decided as a committee to then go and play both sides of politics, to shake a lot of hands, to start to agitate, and to actually put our kind of voice forward to be heard. And whether that's going to local council meetings to make sure our funding's in the right year, whether it's going down for photo opportunities and getting a photo taken with Daniel Andrews or Dennis Napthine, who was the Premier at the time, spending time with Lisa Neville, pressing the flesh with Darren Lyons, who was the Mayor, and then Bruce Harwood, who's an AMO's past president, but also the Mayor of the town.
Yep.
Playing that kind of influencing role and bringing people along, crikey, it was good. And I drive past that development now. 2 new ovals, more to come, and as part of that ring road development, I'm pretty proud of the contribution I made to that. And and same thing, kind of what I talked about with Fiji. It might be a couple of blades of grass that are my contribution. But I'll be able to kind of tell my grandkids about the time where that was just a potato paddock. And I think if I look forward 20 years, who knows, we haven't got a time machine. I think that will be a major precinct. There'll be a couple of ovals on there, be massive things. But I still think also that Mortimer Oval will still be our spiritual home. And I can see that that there'll be further development on there because the town has just got so much growth to happen, and the town is increasingly attractive to the young families, and we're just kind of getting started with this place, and it's just going to boom, and the footy club is going to be a big part of that, and having those grounds on top of the ground that is our spiritual home is just so important.
Exactly. So I think that's moving forward in your life, the sporting precinct is something to be very proud of. When you were in the role of president, you had that little bit of a role, like you said, in Fiji. Now,
Marty, can I also say, I would love to be able to have said instead that the 2013 grand final, when we took on Queenscliff, and my first year as president, and we knocked them off in the second semi-final, and then we rolled them in the grand final, and that'd be a much better memory, but not to be.
No, not to be, but something like that. When you're watching that, do you feel not just like president? Do you just feel like a supporter of the club when you're watching something like that?
Yeah. Because really, that's what everyone is. You're just part of the club for a very short time. I love the history of the Drysdale Footy Club. I love being able to stand with the past presidents and the past committee people. Yeah. I think in my time on committee, there was 26 people that have been on committee. I love looking at photos from Bull Bennett when he was a young fella playing, or even further back. I love some of the interviews I did for the 140th celebrations early last year, and talking to some of those guys about their memories. And each one of those guys has got one thing in common, is that when they played at Drysdale, they absolutely loved it, and they loved their time being involved with the club. They all talk about the spirit of the club. Even guys that have gone on to play at other clubs, they talk about their time at Drysdale really fondly, whether they were juniors, whether they're involved in families, whether they had 1 year. They always talk about their time at Drysdale.
Yeah, certainly does. I think in the next few years, the club's heading in the right direction. Jelly and Flubs have really steered the playing group in a good direction, and I think the on-field will be looking really good with a couple of big new recruits.
Yeah.
Yes.
And those systems that we set up, I remember when the committee we were talking about coaching and setting the criteria about what we wanted coaches for the future, and when we appointed Daniel, and then Luke was on the panel to work about the selection, and then he just didn't have the time to do it, and then he kind of said, the more I get involved here, the more I love it. I want to, because Daniel had said he wanted a co-coach, and then when Luke come to us, and I think he spoke to Cravo and I, and said, I really want to be involved in this. I want to have a bit of a go. And I remember taking that to committee, saying, this is going to be awesome. And it was just nice to be able to have that all set up, and everything locked away, and a couple of players signed up, so that when the new president took over, that we're off and running, and it was going to be terrific. So they're good seeds that we'll sow, that we're sowing, and that we'll reap that as we go forward. It's going to be terrific.
Exactly. It's just you had your era now. We're moving into the Wilder and the Jolly and Flibes, and now just Flibes by himself. It's good to see where the club is going. Now we're getting to the end. We're going to finish off in a little bit. Now, what you're doing now, you're just a supporter of the club.
Yeah, so last year we started a thing called the Golden Hawks, and so I'm a proud Golden Hawk. That's terrific. Coterie group, if people aren't involved with that, I think they should be. It's just a great way to be able to be an active supporter as well. My formal role is to I'd love it to be to have a drink and just tell yarns and catch up with mates on a Thursday night, and then go and watch the footy. Might be my plan for 2021, given what 2020's throwing up at us. I'm still involved, and still active, and still willing to sell a raffle ticket and do some things, and to be in the background, kind of supporting people as we go through.
So no plans to leave Drysdale yet? You're stuck?
I won't be here forever, but it's a great place to be able to come back to, and having set some roots down here, and a couple of my kids live locally as well, and it's going to be a good place to be able to kind of call home as we move on with the rest of our lives.
Okay, so we're going to finish off. I'll ask you a couple of questions, just a kind of bit of fun, and to finish off. Now, we spoke about Mortimer Oval, the spiritual home of the Drysdale Football Club. Back in the the 80s and all that kind of thing, Drysdale was the home in the grand final, and then I was moved to Torquay. And then recently has moved back to Drysdale. Torquay have had all their upgrades, and it's been moved back to Torquay. What do you think that Drysdale, forget about if the rooms are older, just the atmosphere, do you think Drysdale should host the grand final every single year? Don't be biased, but...
Yep, let's call me biased because I live really close to the ground. And it's really easy to get home. But when you stand up on the hill, kind of just around from the cricket club, and when Barwon Heads played Mottawarri, and you look around there, and I reckon there was probably 8,000 people there that day, all pointing their heads at the grand final, and the atmosphere in that place, all of the club's premiership flags were flying. The Davis boys driving the dais and for the presentation of the trophies out onto the ground. The suckers in kind of full leaf, holding the noise in. Some of those aerial shots. I don't reckon you can beat it.
No, I don't reckon you can get any better place in the Ballerine. Who do you reckon is probably the most active, the person that is most dedicated to this club, and is just a really good Drysdale club person and a great volunteer for this club. There's a lot of them. You spoke about the Davises. There's all these families, but then there's all people going right down to juniors. There is a lot of volunteers at this club.
Mm. And there is a bunch of people that just put in a lot of time, whether it's Nicky Dunn or Gary Raymond, Jeff Foote. There's just people that are involved over and over and above and beyond kind of what we've got. Life members that probably should be on their third life membership, I reckon. But when I look around in terms of my favourite volunteer in my time at the club, just a person who went above and beyond consistently, it's young Straub, and he's an absolute cracker. You see him on a Thursday, whether he's in the kitchen helping out, then he runs the can bar and he's back and forth with his trolley, and he'll have a sneaky Bundy every now and then as part of his fueling up to get more done. He attends social functions. He's always out for a chat. Whenever you're down the street or you bump into him, he always wants to talk about footy. So Michael Trewella is an absolute champ, I reckon, and blokes like him are just they're gold.
No, he definitely does a lot for this club, and a lot of people might not even recognise him, but he does a lot for this club. He really does. And
that's Straub's kind of approach. There is a bunch, whether it's Bert Van Leith driving the fryer, or all of these things that happen that never get to watch any footy because they're so busy volunteering. Exactly. It's those guys that are in the background that are the heart and soul of our footy club. There's a bit of a standing thing that you have to go into the rooms of the opposition when you're playing away, and there's always a bunch of familiar faces that represent our club doing that. After a loss, the thing you'd feel like doing is actually jumping in your car and heading home. And
exactly.
The last thing you want to do, but good clubs show the character to go in and have a beer and shake the opposition's coach and president's hand, and there's always a couple of blokes there. So Greg Scott's always there, and Greg and Lindy, and Paul Bennett's always there, and Holdy's always there, and Dick Davis is always there. Cravo's always there. So there's a bunch of blokes that just do that, and that's terrific. And half time, making sure that we're honouring our life members and our sponsors. That's a big part of it. The memory last year of the club singing the song. We had a bit of a tragic event at the club, and I think probably my most emotional memory of the club is standing arm in arm with how many other people. It just seemed like the whole club was out there singing our song after a stirring win. It meant a lot, and enabling that emotion just to come up, and I feel emotional just thinking about that moment. But all of those things are terrific. But it's heading over to Auskick on a Friday night. It's freezing cold. All of the mums and the dads are out kind of trying to help their kids, and then you wear your Drysdale colours and you go over and you just have a chat to a kid or a parent and ask them, are you having a good time, or what brings you to Auskick, and they don't know who you are. They just know you're in a Drysdale shirt, and making them feel welcome, and going out of your way to welcome them into the community. If every one of us does that at every game that we go to, with everyone that we come across, whether it's opposition or locals, that's how you actually get the culture that you want as a football club. And that stuff's just terrific. I remember when the women started playing, and we had I just decided one day that we would give the opposition best player a visitor's best, which is a VB stubby. it costs you what, $4.50 to be able to do that. But it's just a chance to acknowledge people that have done some stuff around that. And then when juniors are playing and you've got your under 9s or your under 10s and they're in the rooms for their pie night that we've instigated, being able to point out some of the old photos and tell them that you're wearing the same jumper at the same level at the same club that all of these guys played for, and to make them know that they are part of something that is 141 years old, and that will go on long after we've left the place. But it's just so important, and that history and the stories that it brings with it is terrific.
Yeah, good fun indeed. There's a lot of business and fun things to look back on your life, not just at Drysdale, but through everything. But at Drysdale, you've been a fantastic volunteer. You've been a sponsor. You've been the president. You've been involved in many great things that the club is being driven into right now and into the future. Greg Collier, I want to thank you for coming on the Hawks Nest podcast. I know you are a regular listener, and I'm sure you'll keep listening. So thank you for coming on and having a good yarn.
And thanks, buddy, and thanks for all you do as well. This podcast is a great initiative, and some of the social media stuff that you've been doing as well. A lot of that stuff's just in the background. It's fashion. Keep it going, mate. It's all of these little things are how football clubs thrive, and so thanks for your contribution. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. Thanks, Greg.
Cheers.